I dieted, hand-sewed my own gowns, learned the words to popular songs, and fought alcoholism. I got out on stage and entertained for 40 minutes a show, 2 shows a night, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, for 35 years. Sometimes some sprained-ass macho jerk would call out, "Ya fucking queer!" I'd say, "How kind of you to notice." Yes, life is a cabaret for some. For me, it was a struggle. At 17, I had a sparkling voice. I wanted to sing up just like Ethel Merman told her daughter in Gypsy, "Sing out, Louise!" So I sang out. And I auditioned. The Mafia Guidos who owned the clubs laughed. They asked me if I could lip sync. Even at 17, I had attitude. I said I insisted I will sing in my own voice. They told me to lip sync, to get the fuck out. What did I know? I was a nice Jewish boyula from Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. Just like your son. Or your nephew. I liked dressing up in my mother's clothes and flouncing around like Loretta Young, spinning through the doors Sunday nights. Every family has a fagala, but some fairies become doctors or lawyers. At a dinner party, I met a gynecologist who wanted to be a pediatrician, but was afraid patients wouldn't bring in their children. No joke. True story. He made that decision 50 years ago. Have times changed? What decision would he make today? He ended up with a private jet and a second home in Aruba. I asked him what made him successful. He said he made each patient think she was the most special woman in his life. I understood. When I entertained, I looked directly at the audience. Everyone thought I was singing to them. It's all about connection. If I was too tired to go on one more time, I'd get out there and feel the energy of all of you in front of me and create miracles. Fuck and bankrupt, I was the miracle worker. I sent people home with smiles on their faces. Straight men came in with attitude. I'm only here because my wife dragged me. Pun intended. I could have given them fuck you too, but I didn't. My challenge? Win them over. And I did. I remember packing for my first trip out of New York City. My mother, God bless her, she wished me well. Hugs and kisses from her. From my father, the disgusted look and the screech, "Don't come back! Get yourself killed! You're breaking your mother's heart!" I love you too, Father, dearest. I made it to Las Vegas. No small accomplishment. On my 18th birthday, 1961, I sang "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" in a tarnished nightclub off the strip. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. Here's to you, Judy. To pills and booze and rainbows. Las Vegas. I had a good time. The audiences had a great time. But I miss New York. I enjoyed painting the East Village red, purple, blue, green, and black. Can't forget black. Did you know we gays invented black? Black makeup, black nail polish, and most notoriously, the black mood. No one lived depression like our lot. We packed 4 to a room because we couldn't find work. Reason for depression. But worst of all, when my friends couldn't find a good buzz. Reason for depression. Every time I went back to Brooklyn to visit my parents. A major reason for depression. My father would say, "You embarrass us! Don't visit us, god damn it! You walk down the street like a fucking whore, wiggling and wobbling. You stay out of our lives! You're the biggest mistake I ever made." Thank you very much. You blame me for drinking? I know. You take responsibility. I am Walter Gralnick, affectionately known as Tipsy Gypsy, and I take responsibility for my drinking. But I have become an alcoholic with a different father, but who knows? Does it really matter? I have enough to blame him for without using the drinking. Anyway, on the bus back to New York City, the girls told me I needed a stage name. Every drag queen needs a moniker, they said. I wanted something simple. One of the girls at the back of the bus called out, "Think of Ginger Rogers! How about gingivitis?" Soon everyone got in on the act. Ornament suggested, "How about Gwen Verdon?" Well, what I asked? "Yeah, think of how about Semi-Sweet Charity?" "What?" I asked. Then Crystal Decanter, false eyelashes fluttering, put forward, "I know! Glenda Benta! This fucker can drink!" The last suggestion came from Madame Overy, who insisted that misdiagnosed was the one for me. Finally, I screamed, "Oh, I've got it! I know what name I'm going to call myself. I own a sex toy purd. Well, tell already." I told him, "Okay, from now on, you fucking dames can call me Brooklyn." Lily White asked, "You mean Miss Brooklyn, right?" "No," I said, "just Brooklyn. Get used to it." They called out like a Greek chorus, "Hello, just Brooklyn." Back in the city, I got a gig right here in this theater. It wasn't the East Village then. We called it what my grandparents called it, the Lower East Side. We have come a long way, baby. I dated. The girls called the men I picked up cockroaches. Hey, I learned about life and men the hard way. Pun intended. One of the mafia bosses took a liking to me. He sent me flowers, took me to Tavern on the Green, bought me a Tiffany watch. What did I know? I liked it. Tall, masculine, thick, wavy hair. What's a girl to do? He asked me if I was over 18. I said yes. He took me to his impressive penthouse in Park. And then he raped me. Welcome to New York. Financial rape came next. Melvin. Yes, can you believe a Melvin? And then a CPA, no less. Told me he'd invest my money. Goodbye, savings. Goodbye, trip to London. Goodbye, Melvin. The gay life in the 60s meant a sexual liberation. Falling in love monthly or even weekly was de rigueur. Birds do it. Bees do it. Even educated fleas do it. Let's do it. Let's fall in love. And to fall in love, one had to be out and about. And to be out in the late 60s meant Greenwich Village and be seen dancing at Stonewall. It was the in place. The bar itself was dingy. But we entered a dark passageway, signed a book with any name, Gabe Lincoln. Paid $3 to cover two $1 drinks, watered down, of course, and we elbowed our way onto the dance floor, claimed a 12-inch square, and shook our moneymakers. I worked weekends, so Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays were my bookie nights. On Tuesday, in the middle of March, 1969, I put on a brand new double-breasted winter coat I had bought while on vacation in Madrid. I looked like $1,000,000. When I wore it with the Russian style for a hat and I butted sacks, people couldn't take their eyes off me. The girl's got to make an entrance, right? I checked my coat, stuffed my hat into the sleeve, the coat check in my jean pocket, and exhausted myself dancing and drinking until 3 a.m. Time to go. I dug in my jean pocket. No coat check. Some motherfucker probably picked it up off the dance floor. The coat had been taken. Arnold, my neighbor and dance buddy, hailed a cab. We dashed home with me consoling a broken heart. I drank my sorrow into oblivion. On June 28th, 1969, in between shows at every turn to Stonewall, instead of dancing till dawn and finding a new husband, Greenwich Village experienced the first instance in American history where gay men and drag queens fought back against a police-sponsored system of persecution. In those days, it wasn't unusual to open any newspaper on a Sunday morning and find the names of men police had rounded up the night before at a gay bar. Today, the worst epithet a policeman can spit at you remains fucking faggot. Imagine what it was like without diversity training. Anyway, the night of the riot, we were hauled unceremoniously into wagons. When I saw one overdressed Bronx queen kick and scratch a policeman, I thought, I can do that. I looked at the sergeant who had me in his grip and I said, "Fuck you, Mary!" Got kicked in the shin. While I was down, I banged my head into his balls. He screamed and slammed me with his nightstick. I should have stayed out of bars. However, in my defense, if you're a young, gay, and want to meet other men, where did you go in those hide who you are days? Bars. We drank until a prince came into our lives. Too often the prince turned into a frog. Alcohol became your friend, your crutch, the one good feeling you could depend on. While Arnold searched for love in subway toilets, I drank. While Marty notched his jockstrap every time he scored in the Brambles in Central Park, I focused on scotch. For me, it was all about having a good time. And having a good time meant drinking myself into oblivion. A friend suggested I was running away from reality. I chucked him out of my life. My reality was liquor, makeup, and sequin gowns. It was so easy to find reasons to drink. And my father didn't love me. A broken heart happened monthly, as predictable as a woman's period. The fucking spotlight was wrong. If I had difficulty fitting into my costume. And the greatest challenge of all, if the audience wasn't enthusiastic, I'd be in a drinking mood, which was how I was feeling the night Andy Warhol walked into the club. I was doing my usual routine at the Monster on Grove Street. Holly Woodlawn left his side, sauntered over and whispered in my ear, "Brooklyn, you should do Barbra Streisand." God, look. I took a long sip of booze and thought, she's right. Streisand's rendition of People always haunted me. I wanted to reimagine the passion she felt when she interpreted the words. I dug deep within myself to find the meaning of each stanza. So many people had touched my life in positive and spiritual ways, and I never made room for them in my ruminations. My mother loved me. She never judged me. But rather than focus on her love and support, I gave all my power to my fucking father. Miss Flanagan in the 4th grade applauded my ability to stand up in the auditorium and sing "God Bless America." Did I hold on to her praise? No. I thought only about the bullies who kicked me because I tossed the ball like a girl. How do I make sure none of those memories of kindness permeate every word? I stood in front of the mirror practicing for hours. Let the love find its way to the surface. People who need people are the luckiest people in the positive feelings didn't take hold. In an alcoholic muddle, I slid into the 70s, my Cher period. Remember how Sonny and Cher ended each Sunday night show by bringing their daughter Chastity out for a bow? In her fluffy dress and curled blonde hair, you had to notice how uncomfortable the child appeared. I always thought it was because of the limelight. Could it be? At that young age, she was in pain, being a girl. I was about 5 or 6 when I realized my passion for dolls and wearing my sister's clothing was more than a passing fancy. I thought I wanted to be a little girl. When my father screamed at me, veins popping from his neck, "You're a fucking fairy!" I had no idea what he was talking about. I only understood I made him unhappy, doing things that made me happy. I started therapy to deal with my drinking. I continued therapy because I thought I wanted a sex change. The therapist suggested I try to make peace with my body. That motherfucker had to make peace with his sex life. After divorcing his 3rd wife, he ran off with a client, a 22-year-old twink named Samuel. I don't remember Samuel from the bars. He always danced with his top off. Samuel's mother is Sue. Some of the performers at the club were pre-op or post-op. That meant some were on hormones preparing for an operation to become a woman, and some had had the snip. I watched the emotional highs and lows of hormone therapy. I listened to the strains of transsexuals not knowing whom to date. Too stressful, I thought. I decided to take my dysfunctional therapist's advice and make peace with my body. And then I met Anthony Rubio, who said, "I like you just the way you are." How refreshing. He worked as an account executive for a big investment firm on Wall Street. Before Anthony moved me into his West Village 3-bedroom co-op, I made it clear to him that I wouldn't be giving up performing. Behind the stock market numbers was a sensitive man. He said, "I want us to grow old together." After 5 years of bliss, Anthony took me to dinner at Elephant and Castle on Bernie Street. Loved their burgers and fries. No roll, lots of ketchup. Then praline ice cream at Le Temps Mieux. Strolling home, feeling absolutely content. He grabbed my elbow, leaned in, and whispered, "I want an open relationship." I stopped, looked him dead in the eye, realized he was serious, and asked, "Well, what would your mother say?" He didn't laugh. How I held down my dinner, I'll never know. When we got home, I said, "Okay." I walked into his office, the 3rd bedroom, and brought out one of his yellow pads and a Mont Blanc pencil. I sat next to him on the sofa and asked, "What are the rules?" Many of the queens I worked with are in open relationships, so I understood what lay ahead. He looked at me quizzically. I pushed, "Yeah, rules. Are you going to bring tricks home? You talking 3 ways? Can I date a guy more than once? You talking penetration or just blowjobs?" "How come you know so much?" he asked. I listened, I told him. His face turned angry. He responded, "And what do you hear?" "I hear my friends say go to couples counseling before trying an open relationship." "No way," he barked at me. I couldn't resist. With a stiff back, I went nose to nose with him. "If you showed that kind of passion in bed, maybe we wouldn't be having this conversation." What's that supposed to mean? Was that smoke I saw coming out of his ears? I was unrelenting. "Listen," I said, "there have to be rules. Do you want to walk in from work one night and find me in bed with Swedish twins?" He jumped off the sofa. "Swedish twins?" Anthony definitely hadn't thought through the consequences. I asked again, "Do you want to see a therapist?" "No," he explained, "let's not make this complicated. Let's just date other guys." I wasn't happy. But because of Anthony, I had begun to sort of have a relationship with my father. We'd go to Brooklyn to visit my folks, and Anthony would talk to my dad about sports. And finally, he had the son he always wanted. After the two of them would spend the day fishing, it would happen once or twice a year, my father was actually pleasant. So I said, okay, we can have an open relationship. I started the 70s contemplating a sex change and lip-syncing to Cher's Gypsy's Trance of Thieves. I ended the 70s in love with Anthony, content with my life and my body, and lip-syncing to Cher's rendition of Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? Tonight you're mine completely. You give your love so sweetly. I had you, babe. The 80s started with me in rehab. They say every alcoholic has to find his or her own body. I needed an intervention. Anthony agreed when my girls said, Brooklyn has to get help or he'll be fired. They said, if you don't want to lose Anthony, if you don't want to lose your career, get help. I spent 3 days with my parents trying to stop cold turkey and nearly died from the shock of withdrawal. I signed myself into a local rehab center near Reese Park. The sign over the door said, healing mind, body, and soul. What took me so long? I'm an addict! As everyone said, we each have to find our own body. Anthony and I had not been having sex for years. We lived together, loved each other. Everyone told us we were the perfect couple. Lesson learned. When your family and friends tell you you're the perfect couple, find a couples counselor. Anthony was living the American dream. He had a high-powered job that paid 6 figures in the 1970s. He owned a 3-bedroom co-op in Greenwich Village. We had a good life. As long as no one confronted me about my drinking, and no one insisted Anthony's life could be more evolved, we were content in our discontent. We accepted miserable as a way of life. And we told ourselves we were happy. When I got my 1-month AA chip, I realized I had the power. I can live my life sober. I'd be the top performer once again. But more important, I could see clearly the life I was living with Anthony. He had not come to visit me in rehab. He spoke when it was allowed, but he wouldn't take the subway to spend an afternoon with me. He registered. When I returned to our apartment, I put the key in the lock, opened the door, and instantly knew something was different. There was light coming from the windows. Anthony liked the drapes closed. Fuck, it had been away a little over a month. Suitcase in hand, I walked into the bedroom and find a twink fast asleep. Must have been all of 18. Marble body, long eyelashes, and a waistline that didn't exist. I dropped my suitcase, hoping to wake the piece of scum up, but no. The young can sleep through anything. I walked into the living room and called Anthony. Babe, there's a fucking bimbette in my bed. He was home in 20 minutes. Listen, Brooklyn, he said, Johnny's here to stay. Think about it. We could have 3 ones. I'm going to admit we need spice added to our sex lives. But does Johnny have a last name, I asked. No, just Johnny. Terrific, I blurted out. You spent the last 5 years with just Brooklyn, and now you've got yourself a just Johnny. I was not abused. Then I played the guilt card. How come you never came to visit me in rehab? Goodness, he says in his innocent voice. Johnny and I were getting to know each other. Should I have strangled him or struck him with a kitchen knife? As I was contemplating doing Anthony serious damage, he said, think of the upside. Upside? Yeah, this kid is built for sex. He's a sex machine. When I reached for my suitcase, Anthony informed me he had set me up in the guest bedroom. Very nice. Very nice, I said. Anthony pushed, think about it. When I'm at work, and you're getting up after a late night at the club, call out to Johnny. Don't knock it. You might like it. Like it, I squeaked. I was experiencing a new kind of fury. I wanted to drink, but I wouldn't give Anthony the satisfaction. Contemplating my options, I heard Anthony repeat, he's a sex machine, he's a sex. How do I get this fucker to stop talking? When I get the picture, I explained. Or I either had to live with this new arrangement or get out. Getting out was not an option. I had worked hard to make me and Anthony a couple. We had two magnificent homes because I was born with the gay decorator gene. Our friends were smart, talented, and devoted. No way would I walk out. If Anthony wanted a boy toy, let's see how long it would last. So I made myself comfortable in the guest room. A throw pillow here, a new chair there. It reflected my personality. Johnny came in to inspect my new Bloomingdale's window treatments. I didn't get out of bed for 2 days. Anthony didn't seem to mind. If anything, he was overjoyed. Now, more aware of Anthony's emotional scale, I'd say overjoyed moved him from a 2 to a 3. For once in my life, I was smart. I bought condoms. Not knowing where Johnny spent his daytime hours, I feared what I might catch. Johnny was everything Anthony had promised. The boy had no inhibitions. Sometimes Johnny would bring a hunk home from the streets or a bar. I never asked. We had 3-ways and 4-ways. I had enough material for a gay man's guide to sexual fantasies. Anthony woke up one morning with purple spots on his face. We had just begun to hear about the gay plague. By the time Anthony visited our family doctor, the medical community knew they were in the middle of a disaster. I took care of Anthony. I counted pills, and I told him how much I loved him. We spoke about the good old times, and I cried, because the world I knew was disintegrating. I looked at his young face and watched it grow old. He'd say, hold my hand. I stopped whatever I was doing and walked over to him. I held his hand and watched the fear fade from his eyes. Before we could consider the consequences, Anthony died. It was fast. It was nasty. He'd asked to be cremated. That done, I planned his memorial. I had help from friends and his work buddies, and I had begun to sing Lerner and Lowe's. I've grown accustomed to his face at the club. It was a big favorite. I decided to sing it at Anthony's memorial. I've grown accustomed to his face. He almost makes the daily day. I've gotten used to hear him say, good morning, every day. His smiles, his frowns, his eyes. Friends came up to me and said they had been moved by the service. Weeks earlier, Johnny packed his belongings and left a note saying he met someone, but would be at the memorial service. He didn't show. I was disappointed for Anthony. At the memorial, no one in Anthony's family spoke to me. When his family left, a man in a threadbare suit, 2 sizes too small, came up and handed me an envelope and said, "You've been served." Notification stated that the locks on my home had been changed. Since the co-op was in Anthony's name and he'd left no will, his family had thrown me out. And here I thought we'd always gotten along. What did I know? I was left with the clothes on my back. I started drinking again. First I told myself one glass of champagne to get through the day would be okay. Then one glass at lunch hour, and one glass as I put on my makeup. Before I knew it, I couldn't remember my lines. I missed my cues. Frank, the club manager, complained. I talked to my parents, who said they would support another month in rehab. Bless them. I needed to be away from everything, from my life. When I got out, I called Marcus, our next-door neighbor in the village, and asked if I could stay with him temporarily. He said yes, thankfully. Anthony's family agreed that I could take my clothes under supervision. I couldn't, however, remove a photo, a book, or a pot or a pan. In order to get my bedroom furniture, I had to produce receipts with checks showing I had paid for the item with my own money. That required another supervised visit. I found a place to live on the Lower East Side, a step above a Coldwater flat. The few pieces of furniture I managed to retrieve filled the space. But it was home. My home. It began to appear later and later in the shows. It seems my act was getting old. Perhaps I was getting old. Queens were dying all around me. Frank scrambled for new talents. I added new songs, ad-libbed a few jokes that became part of my act, and slowly moved back up to second billing. I spent my free time rummaging through junk shops, searching for pounds of beads in order to do Cyndi Lauper. She was big in the 80s, you know. Her song, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, seemed the right antidote for death and dying. I come home in the morning light, my mother says, when you gonna live your life right? At the club, I've become a fixture and a mentor. Fixture. But people would come back every few months just to hear me sing their favorite songs. I came out on stage even before the music began, and my fans would call out, Brooklyn! Some held up big signs with the names of the song they wanted me to sing. I flashed my smile, comforted with the idea that someone out there liked me, and a mentor. I knew good lighting could make a performance. Frank, the club manager, always had a nephew out of work that got the job of lighting the stage. I complained loud and often. Frank didn't like my tone of voice, but he knew I was right. One time Mario, his sister's youngest, moved to strike me. Frank grabbed him, looked him in the eye, and said, "Don't even think about it." I pleaded with Frank to hire a professional lighting guy. I said, "Frank, he'll earn his keep. Every performer will sparkle, and customers will be standing in line waiting to get in." Listen. He put an ad in backstage, and he had me sit in on the interviews. One guy, George, sounded like he knew what he was talking about. I asked Frank him to light an old Queen gale force. He did a great job. You could only count 2 of her 3 chins, and her mustache disappeared. I promised Frank I would stop complaining if he hired George. He told me to shut up and go tell the guy who'd been hired. George was totally over the moon. He'd been unemployed for months and really wanted the job. He said he had a feel for lighting. And then he asked me out to dinner. I hesitated. And he said he just wanted to say thank you. We went to dinner. I didn't let my mind wander because he seemed so straight. I mean, I expected him to tell me about his wife and children. Instead, he asked if I lived nearby. I looked at his biceps. I looked at his wet lips. And, okay, dribbled out of my mouth. You know what happened next. My father couldn't get enough of George. They yacked it up about sports, RBIs, football plays. They made a date to go fishing. I said, just remember who you're going home with tonight. We bought a small one-bedroom in the West Village. George had been married to a wealthy woman and received thousands when they divorced, months before we'd met. He insisted both of our names be to it never got me unpolite. George was monogamous in an old-fashioned kind of way. He never looked left. He never looked right. If I wanted friends over, he smiled. If I wanted to stay home and watch TV, he sat next to me and cuddled. Sex? He was vanilla. When I complained I needed more excitement, he said, show me. I did. He liked it when I sang Let Me Entertain You from Stephen Sondheim's Gypsy. Let me entertain you, let me make you smile. When I passed a feather boa over his head, it made him hard as well. We're talking Steve. I looked in the mirror and wondered why my father stared back at me. Extra layers of makeup couldn't hide the ravages of time. I grumbled. In truth, I whined. George would walk over, give me a kiss, and turn on the television. He liked me, wrinkles and all. If I put on a few pounds, he'd never complain. He'd give my tummy a squeeze and say, I love you. When I talked about retirement, he laughed. But George, I would say, you're getting older, fat. My man would reply, you have a following. The audiences love you. Finally, I pushed away from the table, but continued to gain weight. I gave up cat's corned beef and lived on cottage cheese. Nothing worked. Summers were slow at the club, so I took the month of August 1988 off and went to a fat bar. They did group therapy just like AA. I discovered fat people were as fucked up as drunks. However, I did come back 2 sizes smaller. Just a feather of a girl. That lasted a whole 8 weeks. Back to a size 14. Thinking about the days when I was a size 7. Those were the days, my friend, I thought they'd never end. Since retirement wasn't an option, once again I worked on a new song to freshen up my act. Because George was such a treasure, I wanted a song I could sing directly into the lights. Someday he'll come along, the man I love, and he'll be big and strong. His name is George. George, I called out, you're all the man I need. George put the lights on and off as the audience applauded. I started to cry, destroyed by mascara. George started volunteering at God's Love We Deliver during the day. He wanted to make a difference in the lives of men and women dealing with AIDS. He dropped off food for people who were housebound. He came home one late afternoon pissed off. When I asked him what was wrong, he said he had a revelation. Yes, I queried. Yes, I realized that a person who is nasty before HIV is just as nasty after HIV. He left God's Love and started attending meetings of ACT UP. He liked watching Larry Kramer, the playwright and activist, holding his dog as he greeted the adoring young men. Watching George trying to fill his daytime hours, I said, perhaps we should adopt. A child would keep us busy. We have so much to give. It's the only time George said no to me, and he was adamant. After 24 hours of my pouting and eating my way through 4 boxes of Godiva assorted chocolates, we brought home a puppy. Here's your baby, he said. We called the toy poodle Verdi because I love opera and thought honoring one of the great composers would be appropriate. George agreed. Anything to put me back in a good temper and get me out of bed. In the late 80s and 90s, the phone rang off the hook. Brooklyn, could you sing a song for us on Sunday? We're doing a fundraiser for HIV/AIDS. Or Brooklyn, if you're free, we'd love to have you sing We're Raising Funds for Pets That Have Been Left Behind. I said yes, every time. I loved watching the glow on George's face as I performed at these charity events. Brooklyn, I'm so proud of you, he'd say. You know, the universe put this man in my path to say, sorry for that shit. Here's the prize. Back in 1968, I spent my 21st birthday with my parents. Daddy was his most verbally abusive. Surprise. I rode home on the subway and thought of Sammy Davis Jr. and the song I Gotta Be Me. I tried to make Sammy's voice ring louder than my father's. It certainly rang true. The song became my anthem. It felt right. When asked to perform at charity events, I sang, whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, whether I find a place in this world or never belong, I've gotta be me, I've gotta be me. For my 50th birthday, 1997, Frank wanted to celebrate. I had been dressing up as a woman for over 30 years. Quoting Donna Summer, enough is enough is enough. I said, Frank, maybe we should make this my farewell party. This time he agreed. We decided I would do my act one last time. Now, as I pack my things, I think back on my 15th birthday. My father gave me $15 to buy a bike. Instead, I took the money and bought a single ticket to one of the last performances of A Curious Evening with Gypsy Rose Lee. She strutted her stuff at the old Billy Rose Theater on 41st, where she had performed as a young showgirl. She made a grand entrance in a slinky evening gown and fur coat. I watched as she glided across the stage, slowly dropping her fur and peeling off her opera-length gloves, one finger at a time. I almost got hard thinking about it. Don't laugh. That woman was a true artist. She reminisced for 2 whole hours. I ran out and bought the book, Gypsy, Memoirs of America's Most Celebrated Stripper, and I read it cover to cover. In it, she asked, was my career a mistake? It makes me think today about my own life as a drag queen. Would I do it all again?